Well, one of the key areas that WACSI works on as part of its 5-year strategy from 2018 to 2022 is to look at women's empowerment. And we are particularly interested in women's leadership. We are interested in strengthening the capacity of women, to seeing how women can be an influential part of civil society, play their role within civil society and influence development in their countries. And so the women's movement is a particular constituency that is an interesting one for us and one that we think that we need to focus on. And the Commonwealth Foundation is interested also in civil society's role in participatory governance, amplifying women's voices. And therefore, we are interest aligned in this area to look at the women's movement in West Africa, but because again, we are working with the Commonwealth, we initiated it with the Commonwealth countries to discuss the women's movement in West Africa. Where has it come from? Where is it now? Where is it going? What are the key areas that we need to be focusing on? And how do we ensure that we build and strengthen the women's movement in West Africa to engage not only at the national levels, but also at the regional levels, and together make the kind of positive difference that we expect our women's movements to make in the region.
While everything can be said to be important, there are some key areas that need to be focused upon, and this include women's active participation in politics, in public life, and decision making. It includes focus on the issue of violence against women, because when you look at this whole problems around violence, is one issue that can actually affect and impede women's meaningful participation in various aspects of lives in the sub-region. So you need to look at that. You need to look at the whole issue of education, as it affects young girls in the sub-region. We need to look at issues, environmental and health issues. In 2000, and this is 2018, and women are still, young girls are still dying in pregnancy. Pregnant women, incidences of maternal mortality is still up. So these are some of the issues that needs to be looked at, and needs to be a kind of a common agenda come up in the sub-region, which whatever country you are in, be you in Nigeria, be you in Ghana, Benin, Togo, Sierra Leone, we say this is something we need to push forward to ensure that women in the sub-region are actively and meaningfully engaged in these issues.
Well, I think that West African women getting together to discuss the movement or women's issues across the region is very, very important. In particular, one, we need to make the integration of West Africa a necessary thing, but we need to make that integration work positively for women. So when we get together like this and find commonalities with our struggles across the countries, it's very healthy. And then it's also obviously recognition that we share common issues in this region. So in fact, we cannot achieve what we want to achieve for women in our individual countries without forming links across the region.
The Commonwealth Foundation is dedicated to ensuring the broadest possible range of participation by civil society in policy processes, in accountability processes, in discourse. And in our analysis, there are some sections of society that perhaps do not participate, are often overlooked by governance processes. The Foundation has committed itself to enabling gender equality in all governance processes. That is to say, equitable, equal participation of men and women in policy processes, in accountability, and in discourse. We're also committed to making sure that women of all types, all kinds, are able to participate. We recognise that power is distributed unevenly in society and that some have better chances of participating in governance processes than others. Here in West Africa, I have an opportunity to enable, make some contribution to, learning within the African continent between gender activists that have advanced women's participation in accountability processes in Southern Africa, in Eastern Africa, and here, over the past few days, we've been supporting a dialogue between gender activists in West Africa to see whether some of the lessons learned in other parts of the continent can be applied to enable broader women's participation in policy processes, in accountability and discourse in West Africa.
I think the discussion is very important at this time because we are at a point of transition. So the part of the conversation should be about looking back as to the work we've already done, taking stock of where we are, and possibly finding a new way of moving forward for many sectors and many countries. We've had in the last 20 years, I believe, a sustained movement or action or dissatisfaction within many West African countries. So taking stock of the 20 years to see what has worked very well, what hasn't done so well, promises made and broken, and how we can find a new way of actioning our agenda to see more progress. So many countries in the last 5 years had legislation either to introduce quotas into the parliamentary system, for example, into political leadership, or have asked governments to legislate those quotas in affirmative action, and it hasn't happened. So I think at this time, the conversation is so timely to see that the areas where we haven't made gains, what can we do differently to push those agendas?
Obviously, that across the region, that we should work towards and get more freedom for West African women. But in terms of what it means across the region, we should be able, in particular, to see how, for instance, trade, women trading and women's businesses, and I'm not just saying buying and selling, but I mean like actual business, other businesses, that women are able to take advantage of what ECOWAS itself is doing across the region. A lot of the times in more formal ways. So I as a Southern Ghanaian, I have relatives who are in Côte d'Ivoire, and I know we go back and forth, and I know we trade, for instance, back and forth. But when it comes to the formal structures, it's very male, it's very gendered male. So for instance, that we are able to like push for women to have free access and free travels without being harassed across the region. That we find commonalities, and we say that it was very, for instance, disturbing to hear about what women's activists face in Cameroon. So that the disparity, say in Ghana that we are free to assemble, but that in Cameroon, our sisters, they have to submit an agenda that is approved by the government. Some of these differences we do not want to have happen. So we should have a common agenda. There shouldn't be there's too much disparity between women, in either country, between the countries and even within the countries. So that it's important that at the very basic level, that whatever this integration is, and it's a very positive thing across West Africa, that it works in the lives of our sisters, especially those who are poorer and in rural areas.
An active role, a very active role across the ages, and that's why it brings us back to the issue of this dialogue, because it's not about the older women, it's not about female activists, it's about women in governance, about women in private sector, it's about women as writers, women as artists, all hands need to be on deck. We all have to come in. Women across ages, come in and then recognize that we have a common fight here. And it's not just to be left to, let's leave it for this feminist, or let's leave it for this women advocates alone. We all have to be involved. When I say an active role, it means consciously paying attention and knowing that political awareness must be there. Women must know, because before you embark upon trying to deal with the problem, it presupposes that you're already conscious. You already you've problematized it. You already know that there's a problem. There's a problem. I mean, once you know there's a problem, then you can now talk of, let's look for a solution. So I'm saying, when I say women should play an active role, is let's not be laid back and just assume. There's a lot of assumption going on, and using the simple proverb that all that glitters is not gold. You know, we have over the years, since the 80s, with democracy returning to almost all the countries in the sub-region, we sort of sat back and felt, we are there. We have a democratic environment, we can make inputs and all of that. But it's not, we've seen over the years that keeping silent or being laid back or just feeling we are there, rather than make things get better, has actually taken us back. 30%, which was the minimum requirement for women in politics and in public life, a lot of countries have rolled back to less than 5%. A lot, with the exception of Rwanda, that because of their own particular history and what they just came out from, are still, well over that. But a lot of other, countries in West Africa, let's look at the figures. So we have to be actively involved. You don't say I'm a woman in the bank, so it's not my business. What's the percentage of women in the banks? You need to be interested. Don't say, I'm a female actor or I'm an actress, so that's not really, I'm not an activist. Look at your sector. What's going on in your sector? Don't you have sexual harassment in your sector? And all of that. Don't say because you are an engineer or an architect. And that's what I mean, that we all, no matter the sector we find ourselves, as women, we need to ask ourselves, we need to be politically conscious. We need to be conscious that I am a woman in the engineering sector. What's my experience in this predominantly male-dominated field? How can I aid more women to get in here? So that's what I mean by active involvement.
The Commonwealth Foundation was established in 1966. We've been around for a long time, and with the continuing support of our member states and civil society organisations across the Commonwealth, we intend to be around for a lot longer. So I think one thing you can say about the Commonwealth Foundation is that we're in it for the long haul. We don't come and go like perhaps other agencies or donors might. We see ourselves very much as a partner. I think the other thing to say about the foundation is that we're responsive. I think the way in which the dialogue has been framed over the past few days here on advancing a gender equality agenda has been framed in a way to enable colleagues, activists, to set out the kinds of needs that gender activists, gender advocates have for equality in the region. We, as the Commonwealth Foundation, won't be able to meet all of those needs. But one thing we can say is that we would be able to support the needs that best fit with our commitment to advancing people's participation in governance processes, and that we're in it for the long haul.
After the dialogue, one of the things that we are looking at is working with the different agenda, different programs that are drawn up by the women in the different countries, following up with them to see how we implement those programs, how we engage, broaden the discussion, because we are, as I said, we are initiating it with the Commonwealth countries, but we work in West Africa, so we are going to broaden it to engage our Francophone sisters and brothers who work on women's rights issues, to see how we can amplify women's voices in West Africa and strengthen the movement, so that the key issues that affect us are issues that we would focus on, and see how we can engage the different institutions like ECOWAS, for example, on issues around the gender policy. Look at how we can use data. Look at how we can not even only learn from West Africa, but also from Southern Africa and East Africa, and see what kind of linkages can be drawn. So what we'll be doing is following up at country level, but also looking at what opportunities exist at the regional level to amplify women's voices and ensure that their contribution is felt and that it makes impact in the